ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नर चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome for the reading session. Yesterday we were on shloka number 30 we concluded with, and we are on to shloka number 31 from the second chapter. Tena atmanatmanam muppeti shantam anandam anandamayo avasane etam gatim bhagavatim gato yaha savai punirneha vishajjate angaha. Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu, please do the honors of reading the translation and purport.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Where is Sushil Prabhu?
Translation.
From many days he's not coming for reading.
Mataji, actually yesterday morning only they reached Hyderabad. They were on Yatra, Mayapur and Jagannath Purdam.
He had written
And
a
also
me. I just forgot.
yesterday he returned, but they're also a little busy.
Hmm.
I'll message you, Mataji.
No problem, Prabhuji. Let them rest and all, because devotees need that amount of rest also. So much of traveling they have done.
And little aged also there, little aged.
Yeah, sure. Fine. Yeah.
Okay, Mataji. Translation. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection, he is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. Purport. We should specially note in this verse the description of Gatim Bhagavatim, to become merged in the rays of the Parabrahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as desired by the Brahmavadi impersonalist, is not Bhagavatim perfection. The Bhagavatas never accept merging in the impersonal rays of the Lord, but always aspire after personal association with the Supreme Lord in one of the Vaikuntha spiritual planets in the spiritual sky. The whole of the spiritual sky, of which the total number of the material skies is only an insignificant part, is full of unlimited numbers of Vaikuntha planets. The destination of the devotee, the Bhagavata, is to enter into one of the Vaikuntha planets, in each of which the personality of Godhead, in his unlimited personal expansions, enjoys himself in the association of unlimited numbers of pure devotee associates. The conditioned souls in the material world, after gaining emancipation by devotional service, are promoted to these planets. But the number of ever liberated souls is far greater than the number of conditioned souls in the material world. And the ever liberated souls in the Vaikuntha planets never care to visit this miserable material world. The impersonalists who aspire to merge in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti effulgence of the Supreme Lord, but have no conception of loving devotional service to him in his personal form in the spiritual manifestation, may be compared to certain species of fish who, being born in the rivers and rivulets, migrate to the great ocean. They cannot stay in the ocean indefinitely, for their urge for sense gratification brings them back to the rivers and streams to span. Similarly, when the materialists become frustrated in the attempts to enjoy himself in the limited material world, he may seek impersonal liberation by merging either with the casual ocean or with the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence. However, as neither the casual ocean nor the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence affords any superior substitute for association and engagement of the senses, the impersonalist will fall again into the limited material world to become entangled once more in the wheel of births and deaths, drawn by drawn on by the inextinguishable desire for sensual engagement. But any devotee who enters the kingdom of God by transcendental engagement of his senses in devotional service and who associates with the liberated souls and the personality of Godhead there will never be attracted to the limited surroundings of the material world. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.15, also the same is confirmed. As the Lord says, the great Mahatmas or the Bhakti Yogis, after attaining my association, never come back to this material world, which is full of miseries and is non-permanent. The highest perfection of life, therefore, is to attain his association and nothing else. The Bhakti Yoga, being completely engaged in the Lord's service, has no attraction for any other process of liberation like Jnana or Yoga. A pure devotee is a 100% devotee of the Lord and nothing more. We should further note in this verse the two words Shantam and Anandam, which denote that devotional service of the Lord can really bestow upon the devotee two important benedictions, namely peace and satisfaction. The impersonalist is desirous of becoming one with the Supreme, or in other words, he wants to become the Supreme. This is a myth only. The mystic yogis become encumbered by various mystic powers and so have neither peace nor satisfaction. So neither the impersonalist nor the yogi can have real peace and satisfaction, but the devotee can become fully peaceful and satisfied because of his association with the complete whole. Therefore, merging in the absolute or attaining some mystic powers has no attraction for the devotee. Attainment of love of Godhead means complete freedom from all other attractions. The conditioned soul has many aspirations, such as becoming a religious man, a rich man, or a first class enjoyer, or becoming God Himself, or becoming powerful like the mystics and acting wonderfully by getting anything or doing anything. But all these aspirations should be rejected by the prospective devotee who actually wants to revive his dormant love of God. The impure devotee aspires, after all, of the above mentioned material things by perfection of devotion. But a pure devotee has none of the tinges of the above contaminations, which are influence of material desires, impersonal speculations, and attainment of mystic powers. One can attain the stage of love of God by pure devotional service or by a learned labor of love for the sake of the devotee's lovable object, the personality of Godhead. To be more clear, if one wants to attain the stage of love of Godhead, he must give up all desires for material enjoyment. He should refrain from worshipping any of the demigods and he should devote himself only to the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He must give up the foolish idea of becoming one with the Lord and the desire to have some wonderful powers just to get the ephemeral adoration of the world. The pure devotee is only favorably engaged in service of the Lord without any hope of emolument. This will bring about love of Godhead or the stage of Shantam and Anandam as stated in this verse.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. It was a long purport. So next he says that in the 32nd shloka, he says that Ete shruti te nripa ved gite tvaya vipushte prushte cha sanatane cha yaivai pura brahmana ahatushtam aradito bhagavan vasudeva. Rupa Mataji, please read translation and purport both.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Translation. Your Majesty Maharaja Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. Purport. The two different ways of reaching the spiritual sky and thereby getting emancipation from all material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God or the gradual process through the other higher planets of the universe, are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. The Vedic version, the Vedic versions in this connection are Yada Sarve Pramutyante Kamaye Sya Hridi Stitaha Atamartyo Mruto Bhavati Atra Brahma Samasnute Samasnute Aranyaka Upanishad 4.4.7 and Terchir Abhisambhavanti Brahmad Aranyaka Upanishad 6.2.15. Those who are free from all material desires, which are diseases of the heart, are able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God through the archiplanets. These Vedic versions corroborate the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the later is further confirmed by Sukadeva Goswami, who affirms that the truth was disclosed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna Vasudeva, to Brahma, the first authority on the Vedas. The disciplinic succession holds that the Vedas were uttered by Lord Krishna to Brahma, by Brahma to Narada, and by Narada to Vyasadeva, and then by Vyasadeva to Sukadeva Goswami, and so on. So there is no difference between the versions of all the authorities. The truth is eternal, and as such, there cannot be any new opinion about the truth. That is the way of knowing the knowledge contained in the Vedas. It is not a thing to be understood by one's erudite scholarship or by the fashionable interpretations of mundane scholars. There is nothing to be added and nothing to be subtracted, because the truth is the truth. One has to accept, after all, some authority. The modern scientists are also authorities for the common man for some scientific truths. The common man follows the version of the scientist. This means that the common man follows the authority. The Vedic knowledge is also received in that way. The common man cannot argue about what is beyond the sky or beyond the universe. He must accept the versions of the Vedas as they are understood by the authorized disciplinic succession. In the Bhagavad Gita, also, the same process of understanding the Gita is stated in the fourth chapter. If one does not follow the authoritative version of the Acharyas, he will vainly search after the truth mentioned in the Vedas. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. So actually, these in this this is a very rare in this pulpit that Srila Prabhupada is not quoting any praman directly or indirectly. He is quoting. He will make a statement and he will quote two verses to support that pramana, and then the Bhakti Rasamrit book that is there, you see, it's just one page Shastra actually. The Nectar of Devotion is just a one page. But Srila Rupa Goswami, for every statement, he is giving praman. If you see chapter 10 to 15 also, so he is giving from Bhagavatam also, he is giving from Bhagavad Gita also, he is giving from Puranas also. So he gives quotations to substantiate this point, and therefore this book, the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, this book has become so voluminous. So Acharyas are laying a more laying more emphasis on Shastric injunctions. And even Krishna quotes Pramana in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13. If we want more like he says that Buddha Gita, and Srila Shukdev Goswami also is actually quoting so many pramanas also. So if you see the traditional commentators, they were the followers of actually Shankaracharya, and they chose only those sections of the scriptures which they can very favorably comment and establish their point of view. And the Upanishads, because of its very tricky language, gives them that opportunity to twist and turn things and establish their doctrine of impersonalism. So, and whereas the Smritis, the Smritis, the Puranas, they are very straightforward. It gives them very little scope to turn and twist things. So, therefore, till then, no one else had commentated on the scriptures. They were very comfortably said that the Smritis are not bona fide, only the Shruti is bona fide. By telling that what essentially you're doing is you're saving your sampradaya, because these are the other parts of the scriptures, the Smritis, which are actually essentially a part of the Vedic system, and you are choosing only those scriptures which you can establish or you can twist and turn. So now, if you see our Vaishnava Acharyas, what they have to do is they have to re-establish the proper understanding, firstly based on the Shrutis. Then the same scriptures the Mayavads have accepted, and then somehow there is a concurrence between the Shrutis and the Smritis. So that you establish that Smritis are also bona fide, and this is something that our Vaishnava Acharyas have always been doing. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada titles the 6th chapter of Canto 2 as Purusha Sukta confirmed. Why? Because Purusha Sukta is a part of the Shruti. It is a part of the Rig Veda. And now what the Acharyas will do in chapter 6 is that they are going to show how whatever is stated in 6th chapter of this Canto 2 exactly is matching with the Purusha Sukta. And I have that difference also, because we have the Subodhini guide by His Grace Gaurang Darshan Prabhu. So we'll be seeing, when we see 6th chapter, we'll be seeing the the similarities also. So therefore the Acharyas, they are establishing that there is a concurrence in the Shruti and Smriti, and therefore they established that, and there is no difference between the Shruti and the Smriti. So all our Vaishnava Acharyas have struggled very hard to establish the non-differences between the opinions between the Shrutis and the Smritis, and Srila Prabhupada also is following in their footsteps. So this is what actually this particular shloka, I think next shloka will go. Na hayato anya shiva pantha vishata samsrita viha vasudeva bhagavati bhakti yoga yato bhavet. Vrinda, please read the translation and the purport.
Translation. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. Purport. As we will be clarified in the next verse, devotional service or direct bhakti yoga is the only absolute and auspicious means of deliverance from the grip of material existence. There are many indirect methods for deliverance from the clutches of material existence, but none of them is as easy and auspicious as bhakti yoga. This means of jnana and yoga and other allied disciplines are not independent in delivering a performer. Such activities help one to reach the stage of Bhakti Yoga after many, many years. In the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that those who are attached to the impersonal feature of the Absolute are liable to many troubles in the pursuit of their desired goal. And the empiricists, philosophers searching after the absolute truth, realize the importance of Vasudeva realization as all in all after many, many births. As far as yoga systems are concerned, it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that almost the mystics who pursue the absolute truth, the one who is always engaged at the service of the Lord, is the greatest of all. And the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita 18.66 advises fully surrendering unto the Lord, leaving aside all the other engagements of different purposes for self realization and liberation from material bondage. And the purport of all Vedic literatures is to induce one to accept the transcendental loving service of the Lord by all means. As already explained in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, either direct bhakti yoga or the means which ultimately culminate in bhakti yoga without any tinge of fruit of activity constitute the highest form of energy. Everything else is simply a waste of time for the performer. Srila Sridhara Swami and all other acharyas like Jiva Goswami agree that Bhakti Yoga is not only easy, simple, natural, and free from trouble, but is the only source of happiness for the human being.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. So, this particular text is speaking about that how the most auspicious path is sadhana bhakti, and it is the best path. Because see, sadhana bhakti can be attempted by a person, but bhava and prema bhakti is actually bestowed upon. Sadhana bhakti is what? Attempted by a person. But bhava and prem is bestowed upon a person. So bhava and prem cannot be imposed on anybody. It is bestowed upon a person only out of mercy. So, yeah, so in this particular text, he's saying that there is no better path for a person who has entered this samsara than that which is giving rise to the love of Godhead unto Lord Krishna. So bhava and prem are the sadhya. They are the goal. Sadhya bhakti, you can say. And they are bestowed upon this particular practitioner. And we cannot say that to someone to practice prema bhakti from tomorrow. We can say from tomorrow you try to chant 16 rounds. You can ask them to attempt to do the limbs of sadhana bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu and all. So prema bhakti or bhava bhakti will not be able, nobody can impose, and it has to be bestowed upon the practitioner out of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So Shukdev Goswami over here is very clearly saying, says that yato bhakti yogo bhat, that bhakti which is giving rise to prema is actually sadhana bhakti. So when a particular person is performing sadhana bhakti, he will slowly and gradually rise to prema bhakti of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because currently we have prema for ourselves. We don't have prema for Krishna. And by following sadhana bhakti slowly and gradually, we will come to a stage where we know that there is only one person to be loved in this whole universe, or in this whole, millions of universe, that is Lord Krishna. By following sadhana bhakti, we come to know that what is my position, that I am a das and Krishna is the master. The problem with the living entities is that they cannot accept only that how can Krishna be a master. But sadhana bhakti brings us, so this disease of the conditioned soul is compared to the disease, that people are not allowed to enjoy. They're saying that for the conditioned souls, actually for them, moksha is very superior for them. But sadhana bhakti is actually bringing them to the highest level of prema bhakti. This is what is being said in this shloka. Let's see the next, 34th. Bhagavan Brahma. Somebody's mic is on. Rupa Mataji's mic is on. Okay. Okay. Bhagavan Brahma Katsanyena Trir Navikshaya Manikshaya Tadvyavasyat Kutasto Ratiratmana Yato Bhavet. Anuprabhu, please read the translation and purport both.
Translation: The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Purport: Sri Shukadeva Goswami is referring to the highest Vedic authority, Lord Brahma, who is the qualitative incarnation of Godhead. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation. Although Brahmaji was to hear Vedic instructions directly from the personality of Godhead in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas, Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times, as generally done by all scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas, and after examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. And this is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita directly presented by the Personality of Godhead. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas, and those who are against this conclusion are only Veda Vadaratas, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.42.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. So actually, this shloka is the verdict of Brahma. This particular path which leads to the attraction of the Supreme Lord, Rati, is the very first stage of prema for Lord Shri Krishna, because it is the highest. And Lord Brahma is very determined. After scrutinizing, studying the Vedas 3 times. Now, if you see, Srila Prabhupada also, says that 3 times, it's like it becomes locked. If you hear something 3 times, it becomes locked. Or if you writing is remembering. So, many devotees take inspiration from this particular shloka, that, they read Shastras 3 times, 4 times, multiple times, and they try to understand. So, one may say that Dear Shukdev Goswami, okay, you have given a very wonderful presentation and you have very nicely described bhakti and these two paths of liberation. And you have given also your verdict. And Shukdev Goswami, we accept that you have the perfect knowledge of the path of liberation and the path of bhakti also. So there are two paths. One is the path of bhakti, one is the path of liberation. But the verdict that you have given may be your own personal opinion. But your opinion that bhakti is the best process among all the processes may be your, personal opinion. So, in order to say that no, it is not my own personal opinion, then Shukdev Goswami is giving a very powerful proof in this text that no, Supreme Lord Brahma 3 times he reviewed, and Brahma's whole body, if you see, is made up of intelligence. And after that, Brahmaji came to a conclusion that the topmost process is that which gives rise to love of Godhead, and which is actually sadhana bhakti, is the topmost. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Vishnu himself has reviewed the Vedas 3 times, and he came to the conclusion that the topmost path is the path which gives rise to prema, is actually sadhana bhakti. So, so first time Brahmaji read, he came to the conclusion, that karma kanda is the best. The second time he read, he came to a conclusion that jnana kanda or yoga, jnana yoga is the best. The third time then he came to a conclusion, no, bhakti yoga is the best. So Brahmaji had to read it 3 times and review it 3 times, and that's why he came to a conclusion the third time. Because see, sometimes when we read also now, the understanding will not be very clear. Then again you read a little more clear, and again you read a little more clearer. So that's why Brahmaji read it 3 times and he reviewed this 3 times as such. Let's see the next shloka. Bhagavan sarvabhuteshu lakshita swatmana hari drishyar buddhi abdibhi drishta lakshaner anumapakeha. Anuprabhu, please read the translation and purport, both. It's a very long purport.
Translation. The personality of God, our Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Purport. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Shukdev Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy. And such a pure devotee to the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always in every way. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with himself. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is a seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of 1 hearing, 2 touch, 3 sight, 4 taste, and 5 smell, as well as our 5 senses of action, namely 1 hands, 2 legs, 3 speech, 4 evacuation organs, and 5 reproductive organs, are also our and also our 3 subtle senses, namely 1 mind, 2 intelligence, and 3 ego. 13 senses in all are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy, as this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion. And as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses, as well as the objects of perception, are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between the spirit and the matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development, but such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are 2 different identities, and this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Now we come to the point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction, like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man. And so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence being the direction of some higher authority is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority who is present residing within every individual living being is the super self. At this point in our investigation, we consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perception activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature, yet we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of super self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of the super self in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant material misconception or the true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super self Paramatma to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of Paramatma. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and the individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. But the super self and the individual self cannot be on an equal level because the super self gives direction or supplies intelligence, and the individual self follows the direction. And thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of the super self, because in every step the individual self follows the direction of the super self, in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, willing, etc. So far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and super spirit. Now, if we go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and the super spirit, are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self. Purushottama, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization. And by the progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and principally by the grace of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is the further explanation of the signs of Godhead. So, if we stick to our determination and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence, sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting with another bird, as explained in the Upanishads, certainly the purport of the revealed information in the Vedas becomes clear to our vision. And there is no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva as confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita 7.19.
Bahunam ajanmanamante jnanavan va prapadyate. So, in this 35th shloka, he's saying that how do we perceive the presence of the Supreme Lord? So he says that the devotees of the Lord, the Bhagwan Bhuteshu, they see the Lord existing as Paramatma in everyone's heart. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita also, 15th chapter, I think it's the 15th shloka. It says that Sarvasramriti Sanvishta Matta Smritar Jnana Apohanam Cha Vedesh Cha Sarver Aham Eva Veda. So, Krishna in his Paramatma feature gives the knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance. Matta Smritir Jnana Apohanam Cha. So, the devotees will help, the devotees will get the help of the Paramatma, and he can understand the Supreme Lord's presence in all living entities. But one may, just wonder or say that how will you understand the presence of the Jivatma and Paramatma? So if somebody say, I don't accept scriptures, you tell me the Supreme Lord exists and how he exists and how the Jiva exists purely by logic. You explain to me by logic that the Jiva is there and the Paramatma is also there. So over here he says that it's possible because of the Lakshana or the symptoms by Anuman also. It is possible to understand that yes, Paramatma and Jiva as they are observable intelligence. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that if one is seeing that someone is using his intelligence to perform some nice activity, then one carefully is observing, he can understand that, okay, yes, there is somebody using his intelligence to perform that activity. So one can see that, okay, the mind and the intelligence are just instruments. They are not themselves the doer. Therefore, then by observing the action of intelligence, then one can understand that okay, some intelligent person who is possessing is this intelligence and he's doing this action. So we can infer the presence of the soul or the jivatma from the action of intelligence. And then how will we infer the presence of the super soul? Through inference. Then he says that if then two people they are equally endowed and who are putting the same effort, but see, they don't get the same result. I am doing so much of effort, my friend is also doing so much effort, but the results are not the same all the time for the same person, right? If he puts his efforts, once he may get the result, but the next time he puts the same effort, he may get a very different result also, or no result also, you can say. So then Krishna is also saying in the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, he's saying that there are 5 causes of success of a particular activity, or you can say 5 factors of action. There is the place of action. Then there is the doer of the soul or karta. Doer is actually the gross body, you can say. Then there is the subtle senses, the subtle body. Then there are various, endeavors also to achieve the success. Then Daiva, the Supreme Lord. So when someone who has very similar of these 4 factors, then one may have, very similar, one may be very similarly endowed, body. And similarly, even this subtle body, also one may put the same effort, but one may get, different results. So therefore, from that observation, he says that one can, infer that must be some higher intelligence also. And so by that inference, one can, infer the presence of the Paramatma or the Supreme Lord. So one can only infer, just give me 1 minute, okay? Yeah, sorry for that. So, where was it? Oh, yeah, one can only infer because inference also has its own scope. Anuman cannot, replace Shabda. Anuman means you're just guessing, It cannot replace Shabda. And then using guesswork to understand, or using Anuman to understand the presence of the Lord is like actually looking at a shadow and trying to understand the form of that particular person. So you cannot guess. You cannot guess the Supreme Lord's, form. So details cannot be understood by, looking at the shadow. So detail featuring will be only there through Shabda Pramana. And this is what, this particular shloka is also saying. And then Prabhupada is trying to say the same thing in this particular shloka. Let's try to see the next shloka, 36 number shloka. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada shrottavya kirtitavyascha smartavya bhagavan nrinam. Oh, this is a very, very important shloka. We can by heart this shloka also. Very nice shloka. Even I am trying to by heart some shlokas, so I'll by heart this shloka. Very nice shloka this is. Priyanka, please read this purport and translation both.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Translation. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Purport. Srila Sukadeva Goswami begins this verse with the word tasmat, or therefore, because in the previous verse he has already explained that there is no auspicious means for salvation other than the sublime process of Bhakti Yoga. The Bhakti Yoga process is practiced by the devotees in different methods like hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping, praying, rendering service in love, becoming friendly, and offering all that one may possess. All 9 methods are bona fide methods, and either all of them, some of them, or even one of them can bring about the desired result for the sincere devotee. But out of all the 9 different methods, the first one, namely hearing, is the most important function in the process of Bhakti Yoga. Without hearing sufficiently and properly, no one can make any progress by any of the methods of practice. And for hearing only, all the Vedic literatures are there, compiled by authorized persons like Vyasadeva, who is the powerful incarnation of Godhead. And since it has been ascertained that the Lord is the super soul of everything, he should therefore be heard and glorified everywhere and always. That is the special duty of the human being. When the human being gives up the process of hearing about the all pervading personality of Godhead, he becomes victim to hearing rubbish transmitted by man made machines. Machinery is not bad because through the machine one can take advantage of hearing about the Lord, but because machinery is used for ulterior purposes, it is creating rapid degradation in the standard of human civilization. It is said here that it is incumbent upon the human beings to hear because the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are made for that purpose. Living beings other than human beings have no ability to hear such Vedic literatures. If human society gives itself to the process of hearing the Vedic literature, it will not become a victim to the impious sounds vibrated by impious men who degrade the standards of the total society. Hearing is solidified by the process of chanting. One who has perfectly heard from the perfect source becomes convinced about the all pervading personality of Godhead and thus becomes enthusiastic in glorifying the Lord. All the great acharyas like Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Saraswati Thakur, or even in other countries, Muhammad, Christ, and others have all extensively glorified the Lord by chanting always and in every place. Because the Lord is all pervading, it is essential to glorify Him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatan Dharma or Bhagavad Dharma. Sanatana means eternal, always and everywhere. Bhagavata means pertaining to Bhagavan, the Lord. The Lord is the master of all time and all space, and therefore the Lord's holy name must be heard, glorified, and remembered everywhere in the world. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity so eagerly awaited by the people of the world. The word cha includes all the remaining processes or methods of Bhakti Yoga as mentioned above. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful shloka, such a wonderful shloka, where actually Shukdev Goswami is actually concluding. He's saying tasmad. So therefore, that conclusion is there. Therefore, concluding something which means that there is something which is already been stated, using which he is actually drawing some conclusion. So acharyas have mentioned for 2 reasons he mentions actually tasmat. The first reason he says that what is that first reason he says? Oh God, I just forgot. He says that Brahma and the Supreme Lord, they reviewed, the Vedas 3 times, and they concluded that, sadhana bhakti is the highest. So therefore he says that sarvada at all times and at all places, and with, one's body, mind, and soul, and with full absorption, what he should do, then he should hear, chant, and remember the Supreme Lord. So, why are these limbs of sadhana bhakti, which have been established to be the topmost process, followed, and his faith, he should not be split. It should not be, covered by, either jnana or, karma, anavritam, that way. So the faith should be in the process of bhakti only. Then all other processes, what he's saying, the remaining processes, all these, they cannot be practiced at all times. Why? Because then when one's heart is purified, then he need not, continue to perform Nishkam Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. After one achieves, impersonal liberation, so no one continues to perform Jnana Yoga. Same with even Ashtanga Yoga. That after, he, graduates to the level of bhakti, then he no longer does this all yam, niyam, asana and all. In fact, all those senses which he used to perform these Ashtanga Yoga, he's actually destroying those senses. So he has no facility to perform Ashtanga Yoga only. So all these other paths cannot be practiced by everyone at all times. Then what can be practiced at, by everyone at all times? Only sadhana bhakti or bhava bhakti or, shuddha bhakti. So he's saying that whereas we see to practice bhakti, there is no even, material disqualification are not there. One can practice at all places, at all times. And because there is no sadhya and sadhana bhed at all. The sadhya and the sadhana both are the same. What is that sadhya and sadhana? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, sadhan. And sadhya is also what? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. So, during this stage of practice or during the stage of even perfection, the limbs of bhakti are the same. So it does not change. So only the process of bhakti can be performed at all times, under all circumstances, and at all places. And that is why he says that Tasmat Sarvatmana, that without any split, the two different paths. So, you'll focus all your mind on bhakti. And he's saying that Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Nadam. So then, if you see Ashtanga Yoga has 8 limbs and Bhakti Yoga has 9 limbs. So not much difference between Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. But Shukdev Goswami says, no. Bhakti is not like Ashtanga Yoga. Because Ashtanga Yoga, they are like 8 stages. Whereas these are not 9 stages of Bhakti. They are just like 9 possible ways in which one could perfect Bhakti. Like for example, if I say Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. If I even one limb I perfect it, then I can actually reach back home, back to Godhead. So even in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Shri Rup Goswami says that Bhakti can be perfected by following one limb or one anga or anek angas also. Shukdev Goswami. He himself perfected Bhakti by Kirtanam. Parikshit Maharaj, he perfected Bhakti by Shukdev Goswami perfected by Kirtanam. Prahlad Maharaj is coming in my mind. Parikshit Maharaj, he perfected Bhakti by Shravanam from Shukdev Goswami. Prahlad Maharaj by Smaranam. Amrish Maharaj by, many other angas. He utilized all his limbs in the service of the Lord and he perfected. So, that shloka, Savayamana Krishna Padarvinda. So, but, it starts with the process of hearing. And hearing is what the Acharya says very, very important. So when you hear, what are you doing? From the ear holes, it is entering to your heart. And that heart gets purified. From the ear holes, it is coming straight down to your heart. The heart is getting purified. And when the heart gets purified, then immediately there is Kirtanam. And when Shravanam and Kirtanam, they are going parallelly, then automatically, without any endeavor, Smaranam is happening. And that is why Srila Prabhupada has given this particular program of Shravanam Kirtanam to automatically come for the, to automatically reach to this process of Smaranam. So for Smaranam, you don't have to endeavor. Then for what do you have to endeavor? You have to endeavor for Shravanam, hearing. That is the first step for God realization. Hearing. So, Srila Prabhupada pretty much stresses on hearing. The next sloka, let's see. Oh, we are time up 10:17. We'll do the remaining tomorrow. The 37 onwards, we'll start tomorrow. That 37 will conclude this chapter actually. And we'll go to the next chapter tomorrow. But 37 has a little more, better points which we can discuss more on it. So dear devotees, thank you so much for your kind cooperation, for helping us reading the Srimad Bhagavatam and getting us more closer to Krishna. So this second canto may be little technical, but if we understand it, it will be very easy for us that how will we appreciate Bhakti Yoga with all different paths also, and how Bhakti Yoga path is only the topmost. So this is how. Now see, even when I had read this Bhagavatam, I was not able to understand. Only when I started, doing this course on Bhakti Vaibhav, I was able to do it more clearly. And I did it almost 2 times. I've done this course 2 times. And I plan to do it the 3rd time also. Why? Because Lord Brahma is actually inspiring me to do it the 3rd time after reading this. So I might plan to do Bhakti Vaibhav course the 3rd time as well. So we can have a better understanding, and once we have a better understanding and we apply it into our lives, we can help others also to understand it more better and make it crystal clear for them also. Otherwise, the pages of the Bhagavatam will be only mystery for, people. They'll just keep on reading, but they'll not understand anything. So dear devotees, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Hare Krishna. We'll meet tomorrow.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Shubha Mataji, please hold. Don't go. I want to speak to you.
Mataji, today Gauranga Darshan Prabhuji is